Islam, and greetings, nephews and nieces and brothers and sisters. Today's lesson is on nationalism versus domestic terrorism. Let us begin. Nationalism, check that. Let me start like this. A nationalist is one who is dedicated to and prefers those of his nationality. That's a nationalist. Okay? That's a nationalist. I know I'm one. I am a nationalist. My nationality is American Moor. I am a true American national. And so are you. Regardless of your skin color, if you're pale skinned, you have been amalgamated by this land, meaning you are amalgamated Moors. Your colonial ancestors started out expressing nationalism. They did this by pledging allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, of course. This is what you may not have known. Okay? The flag of the United States of America is a red flag with a 5-pointed green star in the center. That's the flag of the United States of America. Not that red, white, and blue piece of cloth. That's a commercial banner. Xerox has one. IBM has one. Even Google has one. But you wouldn't be okay with your boy going off with Google to fight Apple, would you? No, I don't think you'd go for that. Because they're just corporations. And so is the United States of America. It's a military corporation. Do not fool yourself into believing it is anything other than that. It is just that. So, now when your colonial ancestors were pledging allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, they they tell you stand at attention. You stand at attention, your feet are at 45 degrees. They form 45 degrees. And you put your hand over your heart. You put your right hand over your heart. Well, for those of you who were not aware, that is a Moorish imperial salute to the emperor. We still greet each other like that to this very day. That is a Moorish salute. It's an imperial salute. And those of the newly formed United States, they all did it. They all did it. Yes, they did. And so, you took that Moorish stance and you gave that imperial salute. That was out of deference to the emperor. And I'm sure they never taught you that in elementary school. Why you had to stand that way. Why you had to say the Pledge of Allegiance. No one ever explained that to you. I know they didn't. Because you would know more today if they had. Now, for you amalgamated Moors, you all have an important role to play in the preservation of America. And you're going to have to help your aunts and uncles. They are not as disciplined as you in certain areas where they really need to be. However, I am a nationalist. I love my America, and I love my American nation. I love my nieces and my nephews, and I love my brothers and my sisters. Therefore, there is nothing in the world that would induce any amalgamated or Asiatic Moor to do damage to his home. Nothing. What the American national will do is fight to preserve it. These are American nationalists, not domestic terrorists. Terrorists want to destroy to emphasize their commitment to a cause. The nationalist is committed only to his nation and the preservation of his people. Notice, to my nephews, again, you're going to have to help your uncles and your aunts, because in those areas that are necessary for you to be disciplined, they are not. You're going to have to help them. You're going to have to help them. You're going to have to help them to learn how to do things correctly. You're going to have to learn to move as one. You're going to have to learn to move as one. And I'm going to read to you why it is essential that you do this. Because what I'm going to do today is I am going to read to you excerpts from a letter that George Washington wrote to Muhammad bin Abdullah. Muhammad bin Abdullah, that's his imperial name. He was actually the Sultan Suleiman. He was actually Suleiman. And later on, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and the rest of those founders, or at least a couple more of them, they're the ones who got permission from Sultan Suleiman to enslave the Moors. Yeah, but that's another lesson for another day. The letter begins. Now, this is a letter George Washington wrote to Uncle Muhammad. He wrote this letter. He was in New York, and it was on December 1st, 1789. 1789. And it begins, "Great and magnanimous friend, since the date of the letter which the late Congress, by their president..." Now, you have to understand something, and you were never taught this. The United States Congress and Assembly had a president. Today, the name of the president of the Congress, they're now called the Speaker. That was the president of the Congress, of the United States Congress in Assembly. There is no Congress. There hasn't been a Congress since 1777. You see? Because in the United States Congress and Assembly were Moors. Let me read this again. Let me read this again. "Since the date of the letter which the late Congress, by their president, addressed to your Imperial Majesty, the United States of America have thought proper to change their government and institute a new one." You see, this is when the United States lied, as it always does. It does not keep a covenant. It does not honor any treaties. And it started out that way. Because you see, all of these things were treated. All of these things were treated, meaning they were treaties. And the United States broke out of the gate breaking them. Came out of the gate breaking treaties. Let me read this to you again. They have thought proper to change their government. Thought proper means under threat, duress, and coercion. See, those Moors who were in the Congress, they were either driven out, murdered, or just shown you are not wanted here. And so there were no more Moors in the United States Congress in assembly. It all turned European. They had a couple. There was one guy, however, but that's another story for another day. Let me continue with this letter. The United States of America have thought proper to change their government and institute a new one, agreeable to the Constitution, of which I have the honor herewith to enclose a copy. Now, evidently, well, that's another story for another day. The time necessarily employed in the arduous task of cleaning out the imperial government, or the government which was sanctioned by His Imperial Majesty Sidi Mohammed Bey, after we just can that, at any rate, it was agreeable to the Constitution. Because our ancestors wrote that Constitution, it is a contract. And everything they did seemingly complied with the Constitution for the United States. Remember, what your elected officials, what your legislators have done is hidden the original organic Constitution for the United States, and they've given you the Constitution of the United States, which was written and forced down people's throats in 1871. There was nothing organic about that piece of trash. And the way that you can tell that it is the fake Constitution, I'm going to give you some. Let me confer these degrees on you so that you will know. You will know that you are looking at the Constitution of the United States when line 1, section 1, paragraph 1, sentence 1. All power shall be vested in a legislature. There was no legislature. Only the United States Congress in assembly. This letter, this is the short letter. I actually do have a copy of George Washington's original letter in his original hand. I do have a copy of that. And this is a short letter. And of course, this is on the internet. And so the real important piece has been edited out. The important piece that has been edited out was the portion where George admitted to the Sultan that we have dissolved the Congress, and in its place, we've instituted a legislature. Now, what that means is that Republican form of government that we agreed to live under, we ain't going to do that. We ain't going to do that. And George and none of the other founding fathers ever bothered to mention to the Sultan that they were only there at the behest of the church to overthrow and conquer this land. They never told them that. They never told them that. But getting back to this letter, after they instituted a new government, which was agreeable to the Constitution, of which I have the honor herewith to enclose a copy, the time necessarily employed in the arduous task, and the disarrangements occasioned by so great, though peaceable, a revolution, I will apologize. I want somebody to demonstrate to me what a peaceable revolution is, because I don't know what one is. But I can tell you what happened to make him put those words in there the way he did. When he established his Marine Corps in 1775, he immediately set them loose. He set them loose. He set them loose. That is the disarrangement that he is speaking of, because they tore up some stuff. They tore up some land. Yes, they did some despicable things. George Washington's United States Military Corporation did. At any rate, and he says, I will apologize and account for your majesties not having received those regularly advised marks of attention. Let me translate that for you. I'm sorry we ain't been sending you your money, because you see, the East Indian Trading Company, which was the first name before it became the United States of America, it started out as the East Indian Trading Company. We loaned them $2 million to start it. But they, the founding fathers, they paid Imperial Morocco $20,000 a year to recognize them as a nation, because through this letter, it is riddled with the word nation, 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 nation. Because what they knew, what George knew, was a nation of people can be invited into Imperial Morocco and the dominion of Egypt. A nation can, but not a country. Not a country, but a nation of people. And there were hundreds of nations of people here, especially where the Moors were concerned. We had nations everywhere. We had nations everywhere in Imperial Morocco. And this is the Empire of Morocco. Period. And they had to pay the emperor $20,000 a year to recognize the United States as a nation of people. Because the emperor wasn't going to do that. You ain't no nation. You're visitors on a visitor's pass. And you want to open up a tea shop. You ain't no nation of people. You're visitors. But see, that $20,000 a year, that is why they kept referring to themselves as a nation. He's not. And the real reason he kept referring to their little tea hut as a nation was because what George Washington knew all the time in the back of his mind, that because he was an emissary and devotee of the church, he knew all the time he was sent here to conquer Greater Mauritania. You see, he knew that. But back to this letter. I will apologize and account for your majesties not having received those marks of attention, those regularly advised marks of attention from the United States, which the friendship and magnanimity of your conduct toward them afforded reason to expect. Let me translate that for you. What he's saying is, because we didn't tell you what we were doing, you still expected that $20,000, and we didn't tell you that we were tearing apart everything that we agreed to in the treaty. Besides, you're not here to see us, so let me just put some stuff in the letter and apologize for not sending you your $20,000, and but let me go on. The United States, having unanimously appointed me to supreme executive authority in this nation, with a capital N. Your Majesty's letter of August 17th, 1788, which by reason of the dissolution of the late government remained unanswered. So they got the letter, they just didn't answer the emperor back. It was beginning. Which by reason of the dissolution of the late government remained unanswered, has been delivered to me, I have also received the letters which your imperial majesty has been so kind as to write in favor of the United States to the Bashaws of Tunis and Tripoli. Bashaw is another name for ruler. And as I told you before, Tripoli is Wisconsin. I was in error when I called Minnesota Algiers. Minnesota is Tunis. Minnesota is Tunis, not Algiers. I was in error. In favor of the United States to the Bashaws of Tunis and Tripoli. Now, what was going on at that time? Word was getting around. Those colonists that we allowed to come here, they want to take our land, and they're fighting to take it. That is when we knew that the United States was at war with us. Now, mind you, they were at war with America. They had their little fruit stand and their little colonies, but they weren't satisfied with that because the church wanted all of Greater Mauritania destroyed. And I will demonstrate those degrees to you. But let me finish this letter. I have also received the letters which your imperial majesty has been so kind as to write in favor of the United States to the Bashaws of Tunis and Tripoli, and I present to you the sincere acknowledgement and thanks of the United States for this important mark of your friendship for them. Friendship for them? Did you think that the Sultan was going to side with you against other rulers in other kingdoms in the empire? Really, this is what you thought? At any rate, we greatly regret the hostile disposition of those regencies towards this nation, who have never injured them only because you didn't get that far. And what he's talking about are the Bashaws of Tunis and Tripoli. Those rulers up there, those sultans. Once they learned what the founding fathers were up to, there was nothing but abject hatred for the European, which is why it took them so long to subdue Ohio, because Ohio is Morocco. That's why it took them so long to subdue it. At any rate, we greatly regret the hostile disposition of those regencies toward this nation who have never injured them. And there's the word nation again. And is not to be removed on terms of our power to comply with. And what he's saying is, we can't make them like us. We can't make them like us. But, being in the imperial seat, you can kind of calm things down, can't you? That's how it translates. That's how it translates. And within our territories, there are no mines, whether of gold or silver, and this young nation, where it is again, just recovering from the waste and dissolution of a long war, have not, as yet, had time to acquire riches by agriculture and commerce. You see, it's a company. It's a corporation. It is not a nation, and it is not a country. The United States of America is a company. It's a corporation. But our soil is bountiful, and our people industrious. And we have reason to flatter ourselves that we shall gradually become useful to our friends. Don't know how that could be, since you went out of your way to conquer your hosts. The encouragement which your majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce within your dominions, the punctuality with which you have caused the treaty with us to be observed, and he's talking about the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1787. The reason they needed that treaty was to get those corsairs out of the water. They were spoiling things for those royal papal galleons loaded with the gold and the jewels from Inca, Maya, and Aztlan. Yeah, we used to take those ships. Anything coming anywhere near the Mediterranean, it was a prize to be had. And it really pissed the church off. But at any rate, that's another lesson for another day. The encouragement which your majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce within your dominions, the punctuality with which you have caused the treaty with us to be observed, meaning he finally got those corsairs out of the water, and the church could take its loot from those other lands and put it in its basements. And the punctuality with which you have caused the treaty with us to be observed, and the just and generous measures taken in the case of Captain Proctor. Now, for those of you who are not aware of the case about Captain Proctor, I'm going to tell you now, you are quite familiar with the case of Captain Proctor. Only you know it as the story of Pocahontas. And regardless of how you have seen Pocahontas characterized, Pocahontas was not a tribal Moor. She was not what they call an Indian. She had nappy hair and brown skin. And that man fell in love with her, and he took her back to England. However, because they loved changing names, changing people's names, her name was no longer Pocahontas. They changed her name to Rebecca. Now, what would have happened? Captain Proctor would have been taken from his ship or whichever colony he was birthed at. They would have come and got him. And they would have done barbaric things to him. But the emperor, he stayed all that. And that's why George had to comment on it. Because George knew Moors don't. No. And so that's why he had to bring it up here, because the emperor was most magnanimous. Most magnanimous. For another man, it would not have ended so well for him. Guaranteed. And so, as the letter continues, and the just and generous measures taken in the case of Captain Proctor make a deep impression on the United States and confirm their respect for and attachment to your Imperial Majesty. That is who they pledged allegiance to. They pledged allegiance to the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center. Your colonial ancestors did that, nephews. That's what they did. That's what they did. And then George ends the letter with, "It gives me great pleasure to have the opportunity of assuring your Majesty that while I remain at the head of this," here it comes, "nation, I shall not cease to promote every measure that may conduce to the friendship and harmony which so happily subsists between your empire and them. Now he's talking about those other rulers. Those other rulers. And shall esteem myself happy in every occasion of convincing your majesty of the high sense, which in common with the whole nation, there's that word again, I entertain the magnanimity, wisdom, and benevolence of your majesty. May the Almighty bless your imperial majesty, our great and magnanimous friend, with his constant guidance and protection. Signed, George Washington. Peace.